KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And just a reminder, you can follow us on both Instagram and Facebook. Just look for Viewpoint with Father John. And if you've missed a show, please go to YouTube and in the search bar, just put Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you'll get all of almost 4 years of shows. I can't believe we've been here this long. And also on Twitter at Father John Reed, and Father is spelled out and Reed is the proper Irish R-E-I-D. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I want to tell you all about Claremont Pharmacy, who is the pharmacy I go to personally. Dr. Nikki Ho owns this establishment. It's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. And if you really want to be treated like a person unnumbered, this is the place to go. They're wonderful there, and so I highly recommend them. Also, I want to tell you about my friend Glenn Kirshner. Goodness, I'm having trouble tonight. And he has Justice Matters. It's a great show on YouTube. It keeps you up to the legal stuff going on right now, particularly in Washington. There's not a political spin on it. It's all about what is legal and what is not legal and the way to go with Department of Justice. Very informative. And so I highly recommend checking it out. And if you really like it, you can help support it on different platforms that he has. And finally, Claremont Police Department is welcoming their new K-9 to the department. And they are having everyone invited in the Claremont community and surrounding communities. This will take place on November 2nd between 2 and 5 p.m. at Sanctuary Coffee, which is located at 863 West Foothill Boulevard in Claremont. So you can meet the new K-9 that they've brought on board. And it's a good time to mingle with the police department. You know, Claremont is fortunate to have a wonderful police department. I've had different interactions with the chief there, and she's a wonderful chief. She did her whole career there at Claremont, but really fortunate to have. So come out on November 2nd to Sanctuary Coffee on Foothill Boulevard in Claremont and meet the new K-9. Who doesn't like a new dog, right? Tonight, I have a dear friend of the show and a friend of mine personally who is joining me because we're doing a special program of the Hero's Journey. Martha Bass is co-author of the book Love Heals. Also, she's a lecturer, a presenter. She has spiritual coaching that she does, a whole lot of stuff. I'll let her give you the name of it because I don't say that name on air. She can get away with it. I can't. Martha, welcome to the show. Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting stronger every day. I mean, some days are up, some days are down, but you know what? I'm upright today, and I'm on the right side of the sod, so I'm happy to be there. Now, I did want to say the name of your organization because I'm a little skittish because of the name of it, but if you want to say it, go ahead. There you go. I'm the beautiful part. Gabby's the first part. Well, I'm glad you joined. Yes, and I enjoyed working with you on that. And so why don't we go ahead and kick this off? Because the hero's journey begins with the ordinary world, where we start out and do the regular stuff, grammar school and all that stuff. And then we get that call to adventure. You remember when you got your call to adventure? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. well, Well, yeah, that's the third step because we have the ordinary world, the call to adventure, and then the refusal of the call. And and you know, well, yeah, and uh, with that, with the refusal, I think of, Jonah and the whale, where he's told to go to Nineveh. He decides to go the other way, and it takes him turning a male fish into a female fish for him to finally say, "Okay, I'll go where you told me to." Uh, but then the next part comes that I think is so exciting, and that's when we meet the mentor. And these are the people I call the Eskimos. You're lost up in a snowstorm in Alaska, and there's no hope. You can't see anything, and suddenly this hand reaches in and grabs your arm, and it's the Eskimo taking you to safety. An Eskimo you didn't know would be there. Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, for me, the important of the mentor has been, if you don't believe, that's okay. Just believe that I believe, and that's enough to get through. And I could think back through my life the different mentors that showed up that I wasn't expecting. The group Alabama has a song which I think is apropos called "Angels Among Us," and it's where these people show up, and the theme of the song is "I believe there are angels among us, sent to us from somewhere up above," and these are our mentors. That they say some people, the three ways people come to your life: some people for a reason, some for a season, one for a lifetime. And there's been some that the reason has been to help take me to the next level of the adventure. And go ahead, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's really true. And I think back at a couple, but one of my spiritual heroes, I went through that thing where I said, yeah, I know God helps those who help themselves. And they said, no, that's not right. I said, what? They said, no, God helps those who ask. Plain and simple, God helps those who ask. And that was a turning point in my life. And another one was someone that you might know. I know that your co-author knew very well, and that's Dr. Dorothy Love, where I was going through this great crisis, and crisis time is awakening time. You have to find new answers for old situations. I can remember her saying to me, John, you have to complete the experience, bless it, and go on. Complete it by feeling everything you need to feel, say everything you need to say. Bless it because there's no such thing as a problem that doesn't bear a gift. And then when it's time, move on. But be at each place perfectly. Right. Yeah, and you've heard me say probably 1,000 times, from my book, the three acronyms for fear I use: false evidence being real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover. And we can't face everything and recover. We can't feel everything we need to feel and say everything we need to say, because it stays in there. And so that's where the mentor, I think, is so important, because they could tell us things that my chair just took me down. I guess I'm getting right-sized. Anyhow, the mentor reminds us, like Richard Bach wrote in his book Illusion, learning is finding out what you already know, doing is showing that you know it, teaching is reminding others that they know it as well. And deep down, I'm not talking about math problems. I'm talking about spiritual knowing. Right. And there's things in us that know, the old expression, you're never given a dream without also being given the means to make it come true. But you're going to have to work. And so the mentor helps us with the work. Would that be your experience as well? Yes. Well, in the word Buddha means he who is awake. And it doesn't matter which faith you're in, what your faith tradition is, each one, where you're talking about Christianity, where you're talking about Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, it's all about waking up, being present to the moment, and being present to those around you. Because you can't be present with God if you're not willing to be present in the love that is expressed through you to others. So... Right. That's right. And speaking of that, if going to the next step, we better go to the first commercial, or there will be no more steps. Yeah. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. Yeah. My guest is Martha Bass, and tonight we're doing the hero's journey. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Early diagnosis of breast cancer is the key to survival. Test today. This health reminder from Leanne Thomas, Professional Realty Services, serving the Inland Empire with quality and pride. If you're in the market to buy or sell real estate, look to a name you can trust. Call 951-454-3805. Again, 951-454-3805, or visit thejetteam.com. Like and follow them on Facebook. That's Leanne Thomas, Professional Real Estate Services, wishing everyone a healthy fall season. Real estate calibrate number 017041162.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And a quick shout out. If you want the person with the best photo booth and the best DJ service, go to lakesidedjservices.com. That's our buddy Frank, who's right here in the booth and runs this show. I mean, without him, there's no show. And he does a fantastic job. I mean, he was busy this weekend. I mean, 2 photo booths that wanted him, a wedding that had him. And so if you want it done right, lakesidedjservices.com. I personally recommend Frank. And you know, if I personally recommend somebody, you can count on that, because I don't put my name on something I don't believe in. And my guest this evening, people talk about people I believe in, is Martha Bass. And we're doing the hero's journey. And just as we went to commercial, she had mentioned that we're getting to the part which is called crossing the threshold. And that can be tough. That's why we need the mentor sometimes to drag us over the threshold. What do you think of that, Martha? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And, you know, I can remember one of the people who helped drag me through one of my first thresholds was a friend of mine, Mike St. Clair, God rest his soul. And when I said I wanted to go to college, and I was afraid I wasn't smart enough, even though I'd been told I had a very high IQ, I was dyslexic. And he said, you can do anything you want if you're willing to pay the price. And Martha, when I tell him it's too hard, I can't do this, you say, you can quit tomorrow, but you get there today. And that's how he dragged me over the threshold. So today I have my PhD because of that. And I bet you remember back in your life, people who pulled you over the threshold a little bit there. Right. Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, and the important thing, I love what it says after the test, which is the allies, your friends, and enemies. And there are some people who really, because of their own fear that if you succeed, it means that they're less than you are, and that's not the truth. We're supposed to be human beings, not human doers, and and sometimes we have to identify. And people say, "Well, he says don't judge." No, he says, "As you judge, you shall be judged," and it's important to evaluate who's running around with you, so you know who has your back and who is just draining all your energy. Have you ever been with somebody that just spending time around them, it's like they're an energy vampire and they suck all the life out of you with all the reasons why you can't do it? Hmm. Yes. Yes. Which means separating who's the ally and who's the enemy. And when I use the enemy, I know it sounds harsh. It's just people who don't have your back because of their own woundedness. This isn't calling them bad. They just have such deep wounds that everyone who's, yeah, and when they see someone else, doing things, what they're seeing is that they're not good enough. Otherwise, they'd be doing it. And so by watching us ascend, they feel that they're descending and totally alone. It's not ours to fix it. It's ours to love them regardless. But you can also love from a distance, and sometimes we have to do that. Yes. Exactly. And the tests that come in that show us this. Again, it goes back to the crisis time is the awakening time because we find out what we really know and what there is still to learn, which takes us to the part where we go to the innermost cave, which means we have to turn within and spend some time in quiet and commune with the Holy Spirit, or whatever your name is for it, that's within us, because we're going to need the strength that's going to be gathered there. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, as you go from 5 to 6 to 7, there's that one part that I call having the head attack. And what a head attack is, you're laying in bed, and when you wake up, your brain is like a vulture on the headboard and says, "Good morning. I've been waiting for you for the last hour. For your information, your feet hurt, your back hurt, emotionally you're wrecked, and you're incapable of doing all this." And one of my mentors just taught me to say, "Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to go to action anyhow," because you can't think yourself into good living. You have to live yourself into good thinking. And so that innermost cave gets us ready for the ordeal, because the ordeal is going to hit, and it's an important part of it, because it makes us use these tools that we've been building up, whatever that ordeal is. And do you remember part of your ordeals that in different levels in your life? Hmm. Right. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yes. Hmm. You know, you just said something that's extremely important that I want to back up a little bit and share with our listeners all over again. You mentioned that you say your name in this, and there was some scientific studies, and forgive me for not citing what the studies are. Um, my one of my mentors, Father Richard Rohr, had drawn my attention to this, where it says uh, that when you're talking to yourself, it's, like when you're telling yourself I can do this or whatever it is, it's more effective to use your name. Talk to you in the third person. John, you can do this. Martha, you can do this, because it makes then it's not just a thought. You're talking to your very personage, your individualism, and that's important for us to recognize for the ordeal. I think a couple of times my going into ministry and then going into radio, which takes us to the reward. And when I was ordained, I was terrified. I got the reward of the schooling, but it was still terrifying. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well in a little bit, but also with radio. The ordeal was I didn't know I was going to do this. I had no desire to do it. I got talked into doing a program with somebody else, and we had a fun time doing a program. And then when that ended, I thought, okay, that was fun. I'm done. And I found out that was just a beginning. And now I've had this show for coming up on 4 years that I had no idea. So this has been both the ordeal and the reward. I found I love doing this. Meet great people like you and such. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And exactly. And it's been said by many generations of wise people that you can't raise your consciousness without raising the consciousness of everyone around you, at least a little bit. You know, and that's powerful stuff. Uh, yeah, well, now we're getting to the end of the COVID, not quite the end, but we're getting close enough where we can start doing some workshops. Absolutely. And now, after we have your deal, we receive the reward. There's a road coming back, which means how I take it, and I mentioned in your take on this, is we have to come back to ourselves and to who our real selves, not the false self, but the real self of who we really are inside this, which means we're going to go through a death, and we have to die to self before we can get to the resurrection, which we'll talk about after the commercial break. But we still have 5 minutes, so you want to talk a little bit about the road back, because you went through your stuff with the drugs and with divorce, and I certainly know what some of that stuff is about myself. And there's that road back to becoming a person again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, once you've died, there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. And, Dr. Gregory Penn, who's the Unity minister, used to say, "Welcome to the brand new old you." and, yeah, because you're still the person, but you have awakened on a new level. And so we don't throw the other way. We overcome, and we ascend, and we take with us. And we carry it along, because both are important. If after I graduated college, I forgot about grammar that I learned in grammar school, grade school, I wouldn't be much good at this point. So I have to transcend and include. We transcend and include, and each of it's important, because sometimes what we think is a bag of rocks is really a sack full of diamonds. We just couldn't see it because we were in the dark. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, speaking about carrying a little longer, Frank is looking at me through the glass like I'm going to have death and resurrection if we don't go to commercial. And so you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. My guest this evening is Martha Bass, and we're doing a special program on the hero's journey. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Early diagnosis of breast cancer is the key to survival. Test today. This health reminder from Leanne Thomas, Professional Realty Services, serving the Inland Empire with quality and pride. If you're in the market to buy or sell real estate, look to a name you can trust. Call 951-454-3805. Again, 951-454-3805, or visit thejetteam.com. Like and follow them on Facebook. That's Leanne Thomas, Professional Real Estate Services, wishing everyone a healthy fall season. Real estate calibrate number 017046162.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
And welcome back, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, where you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And a shout out to some of the listeners all around the world that have been sending me more prayers and more love notes, is what I call them, because you're sending great, important notes that are filled with love. Thank you. You know, I'm getting stronger every day. I know it's a little bit scary for everyone. I wasn't too thrilled about when I was in ICU myself. However, I am thrilled to be back, and I want to thank everyone who made it possible for me to still be on air. Frank really worked hard. He had to do some reruns for a couple weeks, and then Dr. John Smith filled in for me. And so I'm quite blessed to have such loving people around me. And you, as the listeners, you showed me how much of a family we are. And I want you to know I really thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. You're part of the reason I'm getting stronger every day. Every time I get one of those emails, one of those direct messages that just say, you know, I just want you to know I'm pulling for you, or you're in my prayers. Well, it means the world to me. And so where we left is we're talking about the road back and the resurrection, which you can't have a resurrection without dying first. And part of that death, my experience has been, you grieve the old self, the old life, as you get introduced to the same old brand new you. And that's a real process, because for us to become who we are now, to die to the old self and the things that all the messages says we can't do this, means that we are now saying goodbye to the doubters from back then. Now, we'll always have doubters, but we're saying goodbye to those, and we die to it, and we wake up. And when we wake up, if you look at the resurrection of Jesus, he still had the wounds. He brought the wounds with him, but he also ascended, wounds and all. And that's what introduced us to the Christ. And I use that generically because there is no spot where Christ is not. You know, it's, you know, light. So, what was your experience? Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. And, you know, I've worked as a psychotherapist for many years. I still see some clients here and there. And you probably recognize this in your spiritual practice, coaching with people, that people have told me what made the difference with them when they've been to other therapists was they knew that I didn't just care, that I understood because I didn't resurrect without those wounds. Those wounds will always be there. Those scars will be there. And now I can use them as tools and use them to let people know, I get where you're coming from. I've walked in these shoes. And so I share it with you, let you know there's hope. There's hope. And you can't have the hope without having the wounds first, right? Yes. Right. And that's why, that last step that Joseph Campbell refers to is returning with the elixir, which means we have found that potion, that magic potion, the elixir that brings life back to us. But it's not done there because, as you and I both know, the arrow continues, which we go back to the ordinary world and start all over with a new adventure. Right. And it's an we aspire, which is we're going in a circular motion, but it's going up. So the circle doesn't actually end, and that's why the circle's not closed that he uses, but it is pointing, going back to the ordinary world, because each time we're going up a little further and a little further. As where I come from, I believe that God is rejoicing because we're seeing things we couldn't see before because we weren't at that high of a level yet. And the higher we go, the more we see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we can say we've been here before. We've done this. We know that there's something on the other side. A friend. And the love that goes with it, because if a wounded child comes to you, you don't say, "Oh, you shouldn't have gotten wounded." We say, "It's going to be okay," and we give them love. And really, every one of us has wounds. If you don't have a wound, then there's you're not in touch with some things. But we find out that the wounds don't have to stop us because we've been wounded. We've died before, we resurrected again, and all of life is death and resurrection. Look all through nature. Even Jesus says, unless the grain of wheat, falls and dies in the sand, it just remains a stalk of wheat. But when it falls, it becomes a whole field. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, because that death and resurrection, we die to self and we wake up to the same old brand new you. That's has greater vision than you had before. And you say, okay, I'm not afraid of dying anymore because I know there's a resurrection. And go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. That's the true merit of life, I think, is compassion for others. Mm. Right. Well, I think that's why 12-step programs work so well. It's because people are defeated when they get there. And I hear them say quite often, I wish you desperation, because when we're desperate, we're willing to do the actions that get us out of that desperation, which means doing their steps and such like that. And I'm sure you do stuff like that with the people you're coaching, saying, look, if you're tired of what you're getting, here's some ideas. You don't have to keep doing that. It's like that old story that people are coming into. We're drowning in the oceans of life, and people come in the boat of recovery and cheer and a new level, and they throw us this life ring, and we grab onto the life ring with one arm, but in the other arm we have this huge 150-pound rock, and we're drowning, and they're yelling from the boat, drop the rock, and we're yelling, it's my rock. These are all my good ideas that got me this far, right? And so we drown a little longer, and they yell again, drop the rock. We say, it's my rock. And then at some point, the pain gets so great that without thinking, we drop the rock. And we come up on the water like water skiers, and they pull us in the boat. And we look back, we think, geez, why did I want that rock? It was killing me. But we can't see until we can see. And that's the death and the resurrection that gives us the elixir so we can return to the ordinary world. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes. And that, excuse me, and that's why it's so important, because here we go around the adventure again, that we meet the person who walks into a room with a candle, and it starts to illumine the room, to illuminate it. And the beauty of that is when they light our candle too, our candle doesn't detract from their candle, but joins with it and makes the room brighter. And each candle, we all become the candle lighter for somebody else, until finally we're all finding enlightenment at different levels. But we need each other's light to get to the great light. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes. And there's a difference between being a candle and being a forest fire. Some people mistake being a forest fire for bringing light, and it's not. That's bringing destruction. The candle The candle is bringing someone to help their life be better and the world be a brighter place, not to burn everything down so that there's nothing left for anybody, but reminding each other we have to be responsible with the light and be that person that is the example of what it is to be a candle and not a forest fire. Yes. Yes. No, you're as well. You're very kind. And the important thing is, one reason that I always love having you on the show, and we have a few minutes left, is because what you bring with you is authentic. And you can tell when someone is being authentic or when someone's just making stuff up as they're going along. And we've seen both, haven't we? Someone who knows just how to talk pretty, and that's okay. I'm not putting them down. And then there's the person who has lived this, and you can just tell by how they're talking that it is not just book knowledge, which book knowledge is important, but this is book knowledge with life experience being put into a combination that turns into wisdom. And you bring wisdom with you because you have both the book knowledge and the experience, and you've had to uncover, discover, and discard as you have come to where you have the elixir that you can share with other people. Does that make sense to you, Martha? Well, yeah. Well, you look at yes, and to be open with them. I think of the scene with Thomas. He says, "I won't believe until I put my finger into the wound of his hand and my hand into his side." And so Jesus says to him, "Put your finger here and put your hand here." He wasn't offended. And so part of us has to do the same thing, saying, "Here are my wounds." So, I do know what I'm talking about and sharing in your pain. And that's the difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy just says, "I feel sorry for you," and there's a place for it. Empathy says, "I'm here in your pain with you to help with loving presence, so there's a bridge out of this room." Yeah, that's the elixir. And you've heard me say this probably 1,000 times. It's not original with me. I stole it from my friend Chuck Chamberlain, where he says, love is the divine paradox. When you go out to get, you come back empty. When you go out to give, you come back overflowing. Yeah, and that we remind each other of this stuff, because there'll be days that you know this and I don't, and you'll remind me of it, and there'll be days I know it and you don't know it at the moment, so I remind you that you know it as well. Yeah. Which goes back to that song, "I Believe There Are Angels Among Us." Well, we've come to the end of the show, and you've been absolutely delightful. And I always get excited when you're coming on the show because you bring such good stuff with you. So I thank you for being such a wonderful guest. And Absolutely. And I was just going to say, if no one told you they loved you this week, let us be the first. And Frank, because I'm losing so much weight, I really am. I've lost a lot of weight because of the illness. But he got a new set of skis I'm going to talk him out of, because I lose any more weight, I'm going to need them in the shower so I don't go down the drain. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, you've been listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and with Father John reading with Martha Bass. And look forward to being with you next week. It's going to be a really interesting show. And so just know that you're loved, and we'll be back with you next week. God bless.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM.